you don't believe in Bigfoot, but can you prove that there's no Bigfoot?
Well, I think you are correct that Bigfoot is not real. However, God is real.
Right, but you can't prove that Bigfoot doesn't exist. That is probably the point that somebody was trying to make by bringing it up earlier.
Yes.
So
Okay.
what we're saying, I'm sorry, I should draw these lines a little better. When we say that we're atheists and we don't believe that God exists, the point that we're making is that in order to demonstrate that something like a God exists, the burden of proof rests on the person making the claim. So if you wanted to make me believe that Bigfoot exists, you would have to first present some pretty convincing reasons why you would believe in Bigfoot. Now, you don't believe in Bigfoot. You do believe in this omnipotent presence in the universe. And all we like to say is basically, how do you know? What kind of evidence would you have about that?
Now, this is where you start to lose your credibility with people who have watched the program before.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Because Matt Slick already did a proof for God.
Yeah, and
you might remember it from the episode he called in and embarrassed Matt Dillahunty, your organization's president.
That's really
funny.
not how we saw it. Actually, what's interesting is that after that episode happened, he went back and changed the web page where he was making that argument because Matt demonstrated that his argument didn't work.
Right. Well,
because the point is that you could take Matt's. I wasn't on that actual program, but we watched it. You could take Matt Slick's entire. We're familiar with the transitional argument for God, and there was that whole program about it. The problem with it, as Matt Slick presents it on the CARM website, is that you can take his entire argument word for word, right? Every single one of his points, as it's outlined, and even if you were to grant him, for the sake of argument, every one of his premises, although on that program we pointed out where some of the, Matt Dillahunty pointed out where some of the premises were flawed, even if you took his entire argument as written and said, all right, I'll grant you this, I'll grant you this, I'll grant you this, I'll grant you this, you get right down to his conclusion at the very bottom where he says, and we call this creative force or whatever, we call this thing God, right? When you get to his conclusion, you can take his entire argument, you can replace the word God in the conclusion with Zeus, with the flying spaghetti monster, with any mythical being that you care to dream up. And the argument works just as well. All right? You can take his entire argument as worded and come up with the same conclusion, and we call this being the invisible magic space pixie. And the argument works just as well. So that essentially is why the argument failed. And what Matt Slick did was...
I think that Matt Slick's point was that everything is physical or conceptual. So absolute.
But do you agree with me that you can
not physical?
But do you agree with me that you can do that with his argument?
And that means they are concept in God's mind.
Well, how do you distinguish God's? Well, first off, how do you distinguish God's mind as a thing that actually exists?
Well, that is how you prove that God's mind exists.
But as I just explained to you,
the evidence from the Bible will prove that the Christian God exists.
But what I just brought up, right, was that the transcendental argument for God, as Matt Slick had written on the CARM website, in its exact wording, you can replace the word God with the name of any mythological being that you choose, and the argument works just the same. And you didn't disagree with me when I said that, so shall I take that as agreement that the argument works just well as the transcendental argument for anything?
It proves that there's a mind.
How does it even prove?
Can I change track? I'm
right.
sorry.
No, I just want to say, but you agree then that the argument can be used just as well to prove any mythological being as well as God. Am I right or am I wrong when I suggest that?
It proves there is some God, then the Bible proves the God is the Christian God.
Well, how do you get from the wording of that argument to the Bible? I mean, where's the link from that argument to the Bible? Because again, you could say, you could take the argument, as I've just suggested, replace God with Zeus, right? And then you could say, the argument proves that there is a God, and then Greek mythology proves that that God is Zeus. See, what you're saying to me is exactly the same as saying that.
Greek mythology did not have eyewitnesses.
Well, I mean, as far as we know, anyone who wrote the Bible, I mean, you know, that came like 30 years later. But I'd also like to go back to one of the premises you were talking about earlier. You said that everything is, I'm sorry, remind me of the wording. Everything is either physical or conceptual, right? Right? Can you hear me?
Mark, can you hear Russell?
Mark.
Are you there?
Hello?
I'm not
hearing Mark anymore.
Yeah, control room, did we lose Mark? Okay.
Oh.
All right.
Hang on. We're sorry about this.
Okay, technical problems. Also, earlier on, in terms of comparing God to Bigfoot, while we're waiting to get whatever issue is a problem right now.
We're going to put you on hold, Mark, and we're going to try again in 2 minutes. I'm sorry about this.
Okay. Well, Bigfoot, God, Loch Ness Monster.
I want to finish what I was saying, actually.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, I mean, the premise of this transcendental argument is that everything is either physical or conceptual. And the idea is that if these things are to exist, then the conceptual stuff must be held in the mind of something called a god, unless there are human minds to conceive of it. So my question, and I think the approach that Matt took when Matt Slick called, was, which one is God? Is God physical or is God conceptual? Because if God is one of those or the other, then obviously the basic issue of the question has not gone away. It's just been transferred, like who's conceiving of God, or where did the physicalness of God come from? Mm-hmm. And if you say that God is neither physical nor conceptual,
then you have to identify.
Then you've undercut your own argument, because by saying everything is physical or conceptual, then you're making a special exception to the rule that you say applies to everything. And once you acknowledge that there's stuff that is neither physical nor conceptual, then the argument doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, we have no idea what happened to the audio on getting you in here. So we'd like to invite you, maybe try hanging up and calling back. And
no, don't try that.
Because that may work.
But let's check if another caller works first.
Because that could be the case. Because again,
the whole phone system.
You know, as you know, folks, we've had for several weeks
having technical problems for a while.
We'll see if we've got him back now. For a while.
Okay. Give another shot to Mark. Are you there?
None of that.
Hello.
What? Hello. I heard something.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, hi. Hello, you're on. Who's this?
This isn't Mark, is it?
No, we'll find out. Who's this? Hi.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you.
Facepalm Day at Atheist Experience Television. All right.
Maybe they can't hear me again.
I don't know. Okay, caller, go ahead. Identify yourself if you can hear me.
I can kind of hear you, not real well.
Okay. All right, well, go ahead with your question. And, even though you can't hear us, we'll try to answer you. And go ahead, ask your question, and then maybe we'll put you back on hold and answer you.
All right. I'm in an ethics class, and our professor was giving us the question of he was making the statement that science is always catching up to religion.
I would put it the other way.
Yeah. But yeah.
I would have to too, but I was wondering what would you say about that? Because what he was arguing was that women's intuition stuff, or the fact that science has been catching up to that too recently, I guess.
Well, I think I know the argument that's been made here. I mean, but I mean, the thing is, for instance, people will say that, not to use the Christian example, the Quran perfectly predicts the speed of light.
Yeah,
you know,
that, right.
and then they'll come up with some elaborate interpretation of some really quite vague verse where they can shoehorn it in and say, okay, if we pick this number and this number and this number and we multiply them out according to what the Quran says, then we find that the Quran has a remarkably accurate prediction of the speed of light. And it's all cherry-picking concepts, right? I mean, it's all going back and it's all going back with stuff that science has already found out, and then retrofitting it to make ancient books look like they have more knowledge than they actually do. I mean, you could do the same thing with Lewis Carroll's Jabberwocky, right? It turns out that slithy toves actually means neutrinos. For instance, people will claim that the Bible predicted that the Earth was spherical, which doesn't really tell the whole story, because according to the Bible, there is a mountain from which you can see every part of the Earth, which is not really possible on a sphere, you know?
Right.
And like Jeff D. has always said, the Bible is the big book of multiple choice. And so if you pick some parts of it and ignore other parts of it, and you're very generous with your interpretation, then you can say that the Bible had this incredibly foresightful scientific knowledge, and ignore the fact that Genesis says, for instance, that there was light before there was sun.
Or depending which chapter of Genesis you read. I mean, you have the two contradicting creation stories right there at the beginning of the book.
Right.
All right, where Genesis 1 has one version of how creation went, and then you switch to Genesis 2.
Yeah.
Go on
and
to
you can
chapter 2,
hand-wave
and then you
those
get a whole
away.
other creation story. So,
I mean, you can absolutely hand-wave those away in the same way that you can hand-wave Jabberwocky to sound like whatever you want. But that doesn't mean that you could have figured this stuff out going solely from the Bible and not actually applying things that we already knew before claiming that that they're things that we can find out from the Bible.
Sure. I mean, the way to confirm claims like this, and this would seem to be, either this particular professor is a theist himself, or if not, he's taking some sort of accommodationist position, which we tend to find really annoying, and said, I don't know, I have no idea. But usually the way that you can respond to these kinds of claims with, look, if science is catching up to stuff religion already knew, then point to any evidence that, for example, anyone in the 15th century knew what neutrinos were, or dark energy, or understood how to perform delicate microsurgery solely by reading scripture for their knowledge as to how to do these things.
Yeah.
If this, it's always it's curious how it's always after the scientific discovery has been made by science that the religious community turns around and says, "Oh, well, but that was always there."
Right.
We always knew how.
God
had always revealed that.
That someday, like 100 years from now, people are going to be saying, "Look how accurately the Bible describes evolution."
Right. Yeah.
I betcha.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so if you don't, so I guess that's it, pretty much. I mean, I don't have anything.
Do you have anything else?
Yeah.
I keep looking up at where the speaker is,
Yeah,
which
I know.
I keep telling myself not to do. But
I guess
I
not.
don't know.
Okay, I guess we're done with
I
that. We'll see
feel like the sound is still not where it should be. And Mark, if you're out there, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, we didn't cut you off. We want to talk to you.
Maybe other members of Mark's church could keep trying to call just so that somebody manages to get in.
You can also go email us at tv@atheist-community.org. You can visit the show blog, which after the program we're gonna always once again put up our daily post about this program, which will be the open comment thread to pertaining to this episode, and anybody who wants to comment there, either Mark or anyone from his church, can do so. So
okay. Yeah. So I guess we'll go next to Joseph in Seattle. Joseph.
How you doing, sir? Am I on?
Hi. Yes, you are actually. We can hear you.